Audio is on, video is on, and Nas and Asif is on. All
That's
right,
right.
let's talk about AXEGENAI. What do we got today?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Well, again, it's
Good
another
morning, AXEGENAI.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. First of many to come, I guess. It's a beautiful day here in Texas. For our listeners or whoever can join, I think these are exciting times.
That's
And
right.
looking forward to having, I guess, the start of a journey. What do they say? Is a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. This is our single step. This is our first step. So excited, looking forward to it. See what the conversation on whales. It's an open dialogue, so it's both ways, sharing some and learning some. So
Yeah.
so let's just what I said. Let's just get into the inevitable.
Yeah, no, start with yourself. Tell us about you, and I know about you, but people
Yeah.
listening doesn't know about you. So tell them what they would like to hear.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I've been fortunate, had a what I call a little bit of colorful background, just kind of on a lighter note. Um, I got recruited from high school, actually college, through a hackathon within the DoD realm.
Oh,
So I
okay.
got picked up. I was in New York, and I was up in first year college, second year college, and they were doing a hackathon, and team of three individuals. There were total seven teams, and our team came first. I didn't know, and none of the team members know that was actually there were the DoD was doing a recruitment behind that. So we ended up getting a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you guys are kind of selected. Here's the reward money, and let's go get you interviewed and let's get you onboarded." Um, and the rest, as they say, is history. I got flown into DC, got interviewed, joined the company. Literally, I've been fortunate enough to have been around the world wherever there's military base. I spent 14 years in defense, working
Yeah.
on C4I systems, building systems, training folks around the globe. And then when I came out of DoD, I wanted to get into consulting, and I got picked up by Accenture. Had an exciting career there with Accenture. Great folks there. Had a chance to learn a lot, share a lot. I was actually one of the early certified individual when I started working with them back in the days when cloud was relatively new in the sort of the enterprise space. From there, I did a couple of startups on the side, and I got picked up by Deloitte. A buddy of mine left and joined Deloitte. They were going through some initiative in building delivery arms around the globe, and they recruited me to come and help them out. In addition to being strategist, so did that. I mean, that was exciting times. Then again, I say, I mean, I'm going to keep it short. Then I got picked up by Andy Jesse's initiative at AWS. They were helping transform DXC. So I had a chance to work on that gig for a little bit, and then from there I got picked up by PwC. Since then, it's been a great run, helping build practices, helping build go-to-market collateral within the practice, helping build capabilities within the firm, and really kind of bringing what I call what the cloud has to offer, or the best has to offer into the sort of arena and into the attention of our customers, and then really helping them transform. So it's been exciting, and then from there, obviously as you and I we met and we it was a great discussion when we initially met, and then we ended up forming AXEGENAI. It's such a crucial point, right? I mean, I think we can get into that discussion a little bit later, but I want to pause at the intro part is so really, I mean, that's who I am in a nutshell.
Yeah. So I think I've been doing this live webinars for for quite a while now. And prior to that, what I was doing is, calling people in from different industries and introducing them to artificial intelligence and machine learning. And when I say that, I've done that for months and years, where there were days when nobody would show up to the discussion, right? And people that did show up, they were very skeptical, and people that did show up brought in a lot of questions, and these questions were more about the logistics and finance side of things. So as you can tell, this discussion is around financing your AI machine learning project, right? Um, so when you ask me like, what do you want to talk about? So I'm like, well, let's talk about the money side of things, right? AI machine learning is that shiny thing on top of the mountain, but how much does it cost to get there? That shiny thing, of course, costs money, and money is what holds them back. No matter how much skepticism they have about this technology or whatever sort of fear that they have or curiosity they have, what holds them back is the money, right? Not necessarily the innovation or the output that AI can AI can create, generate. Um, so the reason I got into the AI machine learning realm of things is because when I was in the military, I did 10 years in the Air Force, and what I've seen is the drone operations, the deterrence methods, the understanding of motion intelligence, understanding human behaviors, and understanding all sorts of aspects of it. But most of it was redundant and repeatable, and we've been doing that for 40, 50 years very manually. Right. So military has been a shining example of what AI can do for military in order to have a better operation that is human centric. So that way the human creativity kicks in more than to say, I've been told to do this manual and mundane thing to do on a daily basis. Right. So that's my background, 10 years in the Air Force. And all of a sudden when I'm out, guess what I focus on? AI, right? So that was back in 2015. So when I met in the Zoom call, nobody showed interest. Back in 2015, everybody was just like, "What? You're talking about IBM Watson?" That's literally what everybody knew back in those days. That IBM Watson was the only AI in town, and nobody else really paid attention to it other than IBM Watson folks.
Yeah.
It was glorified AI back then. This IBM Watson, piqued my interest because when I was in that drone operation, I realized how much of man hours and human capital that we have to spend on drone operation. That drones at that point was getting to the point of being AI operated, and lo and behold, I did not get into the drone AI. I didn't go into motion intelligence. At that point, I started off with machine learning for a recommender system to help customers understand what sort of diet they should go after and help out the mom and pop shop in the process. So I want to incorporate a mom and pop shop idea through the diet process and say, how do we do it for a complete $0? And that back then was a deterrence point, actually. To make it $0 was not feasible at that time, right? 2016. So that led me into saying something more relevant to what I did in the military, which is tracking IP addresses, right? Tracking movements. So I was doing a blockchain tracking of IP addresses through a ledger system. So that when you do digital forensics, you have a trust score using machine learning to give that trust score to say that IP address did not originate where you think it originated from. So you have a faster digital forensics to say where the attack actually came from. Fast forward, I did get into motion intelligence eventually, and then realized that there's so much context to be fed to a system. Again, $0, I cannot afford it, right? Microsoft and Google can afford it at that time. So I jumped into something that is more affordable, which is large language model. And of course, what you're seeing today with ChatGPT is that's how you know how much it actually costs to create a large language model. It doesn't cost much, but it is tedious. It does have a lot of holes that you just fill in order to make it affordable and cheap, right? So that's me in a nutshell. But I want to set the stage, right, for us to talk about what is that we're discussing here, right? How do we keep it cost effective, have a better return on investment? But before we jump into that return on investment conversation, let's talk about our team, right? We have a fantastic team in AXEGENAI, a dream team, I would say. And you're the coach, like Ted Lasso. You're the coach. You know?
Barely, it's been a humbling experience, and I barely try. How about that?
Right.
I think the team in itself is excellent, and I'm learning from them.
Right.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a star-studded team, to say the least. And I've been personally fortunate enough to be exposed to such a talent in my early days, and started building friendship. With these top minds in the industry and in their own sort of respective fields. And as they say in life, every journey you take prepares you for something. And I think as we had taken this journey, or at least as I was on this journey and been through sort of ups and downs and making friends, I think if I look back and, today where I am, would I change anything? Probably not. I mean, again, but I'm also off the opinion, if the data changes, so should you. But what I knew then absolutely wouldn't change a thing. What I knew now, would there be changes? perhaps it could be discussed. But that's a digression. But again, to your point, it's a star-studded team. Uh, we have amazing folks like again we have Sajalo, who has spent 20 years in fintech, private equity, cybersecurity realm of things. Currently doing his further studies on the ethics of AI and within the cybersecurity permutations. Great individual. Him and I would go back in the days of high school. Then we have one of our great friend Muzammil, right? He has been in the CFO role for a long time. So, you want to talk about numbers? I say this is the guy, right? You want to kind of like curate a story on numbers. He's the guy. You want to listen
Let's
to
just
fairy tales
let's just talk
numbers.
about
He's
finance right here, because why are we talking about finance when we have Muzammil on the team? Where is
yeah.
he at?
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's again. I think this was a bit of for us to do an open dialogue, and I think to be fair, this was you and I kind of like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Kind of sort of let's get in front of the audience.
Yeah.
But they have I've given them charters in terms of their work stream that they're working on. So absolutely, as we move forward, I'm sure that we will have their presence in the conversations. But they're working on certain things as we speak, and then we have our advisory strategic advisor that is part of our team. I don't know what you can say about that guy. He's the person who recruited me into PwC. I have been under his tutelage since I started that, and I wouldn't change a damn thing about it, to be honest. And I'm
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to to have him on my side and his ear, if that matters. But an amazing wealth of knowledge. I mean, there's a lot that you can say for a partner that has actually what in my perspective, for all intents and purposes, he built PwC. He was part of the team that built PwC. He's held top positions at Gerard. He has held top positions within the firm. He built and led data analytics practice within PwC, built the global alliance practices, AWS practice within PwC. And as I said, he brought me in, and whatever my accomplishments are attributed to him, right? If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be there. So he's also on the team, guiding me, guiding us all together, guiding the company directions. And again, we have other folks that we're partnering with, such as Terry. What a great mind, the guy. I mean, who actually, whose his day hobby is writing articles on deep learning and algorithms. That's what he does. He
You have to
teaches.
meet him to believe him,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have to meet
He's a
him. Like
visiting.
you're like, wait, he's a wizard for
Yeah,
real? Oh, let's
that's right.
meet him. And then when you meet him, you're like, yep, he's a wizard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's a visiting faculty here at UTD Dallas. He's a visiting faculty at a couple of universities up in Europe. He's an avid speaker about on the topic of AI machine learning around the globe. Very accomplished in his domain. He's also part of our strategic partnership. So there's again, as you pointed out, the team is everything, and it is. I don't know if there's a word to even describe. This is not just the dream team. This is the team or a team or whatever. There's
A-team.
a fancy word out there, but this is it. And I've been I've been fortunate to be associated with the top minds in the industry.
Right, right.
And not to mention, I shouldn't pause there, but I have another guy. His name is Asif. Who is also part of the team and who is a CEO off the startup. Such as you obviously use us of you, right? So and again, I've been fortunate to meet you, have conversations, and have a spark which ignited to where we are today. You have your own domain expertise, as you explained it to users or listeners earlier. What I admire about you is your humbleness, even though what you all know within the domain and the industry. And to listeners, I mean, Asif is a humble guy when he comes about him explaining about himself. Very humble guy, but what an amazing mind. I mean, once you start to get to know Asif, it's just a whole different realm that you get into. So I've been fortunate to be alongside you having this conversation alongside of my team. Team is what makes me. I'm just the voice, right? I'm just the guy who's pulling it together.
Yeah, I'm going to brag a little bit about myself. One thing
You
that
should.
was effective about me is that I've always broke down the logistics, the cost of doing this AI business for folks, and people tend to like people that make things cheaper for them to acquire, right? So when you're discussing data acquisition, you can go down the rabbit hole of how much that will cost me. But when you call it a machine learning acquiring, you tend to have a different perspective, and that perspective will lead you either down to the expensive path or a very path of least resistance, which is the cheap one, right? Cheap one to say, how do you create the MVP? That's why I've been successful, and I believe this team will be successful because that's our mantra, right? Our mantra is to how do we keep it most effective, right? We have a mission statement, which I'm literally skipping at this point, but one that I will bring up eventually. But that's the importance of doing business in AI and machine learning. You have to start right. But if you start expensive, you tend to go down that 5-year life cycle of loss, right?
Yeah.
I think Dimitri's from MLOps community will say it's a loss center, not a cost center.
Yes.
So how do you make it relevant to your business operation, your business logic? How do you mind that process and have it return on investment that is effective, right? And I'm jumping into the conversation about the finance side of things now. Let's discuss that because what we haven't seen back in 2022 is any interest in AI until the end of the year when ChatGPT came around, and full 2023, which feels like about 20 years ago, everybody just talked about AI nonstop, right? 2023 was the year that was a shining moment. I mean, many other things have happened in 2023, but ChatGPT is the one that broke the ground, right? Now that it's 2024, everybody's talking with the money in the pocket, as in the budget has been forecasted, right? And the last 6 months that we've been initiating this business of ours, what we realize is the budget is all around us. We just have to figure out how to make that budget more effective for people to address, right? Just because there's a budget doesn't mean you just go out and spend the money, right? It's not a credit card system that you can just pay off later. Everything you spend today has to return within 12 months. And we just looked at Microsoft IDC, right? Microsoft funded the IDC research to say, what is it like for you to invest money into artificial intelligence and machine learning today? And if you invest on money in artificial intelligence today, Microsoft is, putting out some numbers as in like just about 12 months for you to see the return on investment. And that return on investment is most likely going to be for every dollar, it's $3.50 that you get back, right? How do you quantify that for yourself? Is the logistics that you have to understand, because that $3.50 is not necessarily the bottom line, right? That's probably the starting point. How do you maximize that to say for every dollar you get $10 back, right? Let's discuss that a little bit. I think you've done some research. I've done some research. Let's get into that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting sort of paradigm. The research indicated recently that I was reading up that the generative AI will boost the global GDP by $7 trillion in coming years. That's a substantial amount of money. And before we get into even all of those, I think one of the key coming from a consulting background and dealing with a lot of enterprises, one of the main thing what I've got to learn is when it comes to finances, when it comes to spending money on initiatives, you're not alone. There are actually partners that give you pool of funding to do things that you want to do within your enterprise, as long as there's some sort of cohesion, some sort of alignment in terms of what that is. So a lot of the organizations, right, kind of jumping into your point, jumping right in, is when you talk about financing for these initiatives, number one thing is don't think that you're going to have to go to your bank account and empty it out.
Right.
It's almost, I don't want to use the word shared responsibility, but it's almost a shared pool that's available to every enterprise out there. The difference is, do you know where it is versus not knowing, right?
Right.
I've dealt with, for instance, Amazon Web Services. They have a number of different programs that an enterprise or customer can leverage to start budgeting for their initiative. And that's something to do with innovation, right? I'm not specifically talking about the company specific initiatives where the company says, here's my budget for fiscal year XYZ for these quarters, right? I'm talking about like the grunt work. I'm talking about more in terms of the enablement to get to that point from a technology
Yeah.
footprint or change management or what have you. So you know, like I mean, you're not alone. You have resources to dig into. What
Yeah.
I, as I said, I mean, that was a learning that I had, and the other point on that is the a lot of the enterprises don't know, they're not aware of how to even start that conversation. So as we hear about, Accenture spending $4.2 billion in Anthropic,
Uh,
what
Amazon, AWS, not Accenture.
it was. Yes, you're right.
Accenture is their own
Amazon.
investment.
Correct.
AWS is Anthropic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Thanks for correcting me. Yes, it is. It is Amazon $4.2 billion in there. I think they already spent 2.5 or $2 billion already on the acquisition. And I know McKinsey, they had a agreement with OpenAI, the obviously the founder of ChatGPT, to come in and do the upskilling. I haven't come across the number, but I mean it's going to be somewhere in the billions. Um, and then PwC alone, right? They allocated $1 billion initiative toward generative AI. Deloitte is
Billions. B for
yeah,
billions. I love
B's
that.
for billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
B for
And
billions.
Deloitte, I think I heard somewhere they were talking about close to $2.5 billion for upskilling. And these are just we're just talking about sort of what I call the big four and the consulting companies, right? What that translates into a couple of things. One is, and again, as a consultant, this is a consultancy lens. This is, I mean, it's a bit subjective as well. If the big fours are setting aside these budgets or earmarking these sort of what I call figures for upskilling within the realm of generative AI, there's a lot of adjacencies to that. There's a lot of parallels to that, and it's not just them, right? So it's every CSP, which is cloud service provider, that work with ISV service software vendors that work with, and their internal sort of initiative as well. So the pool of money drastically increases, right? And what that is for any potential client that is looking to get into realm of generative AI to bring that and infuse that into their ecosystem. The point that I'm trying to make is that this funding mechanism is for them as well. It's a shared pool because the CSPs going to GSI is saying, hey, let's go help client. We're going to spend this much money to help them set the path to success for generative AI. And these incentives are passed through from, from CSPs to GSIs to then enterprise clients. So it's an interesting paradigm. And again, just because I guess, I mean, as in my learnings, I noticed there was a gap in terms of people knowing where, how this sort of trickles down. But now I believe with, sort of every news flash out there, the enterprises are getting to know what that is. So the next years or next couple of years going to be something to sort of like what I call glean in terms of like what comes out of it, how this sort of pans in and what comes out on the other side, because it's going to be an interesting insight. And I don't know the answer to that, how that's going to pan out.
Yeah, I think it sounds cliche, but when you start small, like you said, you got to take the first step for 1,000-mile journey. Um, it's that when you start with a question, and that question is where lots of Gartner report, McKinsey, Deloitte, they put out these results into what happens if some organization or some team that comes together as a people and start developing a process, what they end up delivering as a technology, right? That people, process, technology. But if you look at the same report and read kind of the bottom of it, you see why these technology fail, because the people that started the process, they ended up asking the wrong question. And that is true in all technology, and this is no different in machine learning. But what sets machine learning apart is that core of machine learning is based on a question. Because when you're going to this data journey that you haven't been part of or you haven't really been involved in, you really have to get involved at this point. At this point, your data portfolio matters as much as your uh, fixed asset portfolio, your financial portfolio, whatever the case is, your data portfolio is going to drive your business from now on. And that's what's happening in Wall Street. That's what's happening worldwide. So this data question that you have in machine learning that you have to attach to it, it starts with a question. So this first step you take, you really have to think about it from the cost-effective perspective. Keep it as minimal as possible, but ask the right question that you can sustain and scale from. Right. So, you went through multiple reports. If you look at the industry as wide, manufacturers, they have such a fixed asset issues, as in you have a inventory, you have a space to manufacture, and you have a shop floor, you have all these machines. You really have to make everything work for dollar, right? So when you have to ask those questions, you have no wiggle room to say like, oh, let me just try this out and fail and then move on. But by the time you spent that much money, there is no moving on. You have to really adjust back to what you started spending money on and make that work again, right? So version iteration really matters. That if you will spend the money, the penny on it, you really have to make it worth the while. Even if you fail, how do you pick it back up? So that right question along with the right footstep that you take in order to say, there's no turning around per se, but if I have to turn around, how much can I take back with me, right? This data that I'm investing on, what is the question I'm going to ask from this data, and how do I make this data worth my while, right? So sustaining and scaling and version iterations, this is a thought process that you have to have. We already have that with many aspects, but from data perspective, it really is important that we ask the right question and we understand what the future vision looks like. So a lot of the organization does go outside of their organization to look for what everybody else is doing, kind of keeping up with Joneses. But what you have to really look into is internally. Internally, let's say, for example, manufacturing, you have to look at your shop floor and say, what does my shop floor has that is super unique, right? And how do I develop a AI machine learning data or a question around that perspective, right? Because all shop floors are equal, as in it does have a floor. But what's operating on top of that shop floor is what differentiates you, right? And that's what your business logic is. That's what makes you successful. So I don't think we can go all into the details about it, but this is an ongoing conversations we will have. I really just want to get the conversation started. This is a roundtable. We're going to have plenty of our folks come in and join. People that know us, like us, they want to be on the webinar with us, kind of a deal. We're going to invite them in and have them join the conversation, so that way we can have a longer, lengthier discussion, right? And we want people to benefit from it, because when they think about AI, they think of millions. I want you to start thinking of dollars, as in thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars. Because if you do it right, you can get it started for close to, if I'm not kidding, this is a real happening example, for thousands of dollars of subscriptions. But expensive part of that process is the people, the human capital, the labor that goes into it, the subject matter expertise that comes in to provide the services. If that's the expensive part, how would you navigate around that to say, who do I have within my organization that it's part of my cost structure as it is? So as I do my CapEx, I'm looking at these individuals to help me to get started. And how do I keep it to minimals, as in that human capital is already part of my OpEx? As I expand my CapEx, how do I get these individuals involved and help me develop this AI machine learning solutions going forward?
Yeah. And I think you touched the right nerve here. I mean, it's a bit of what I consider to be self-critical moment in terms of where the organizations are. And look, I mean, for all intents and purposes, as I said earlier, number one thing is you don't have to go like literally set aside a POC funding. You have mechanisms and vehicles that you could use to do the POC. The question becomes is, how do you get the ROI of things that you are trying to do within your organization? And you, again, as I said, you touched the nerve, is the upskilling piece. You can't realize the ROI if you don't know, if your people rather don't know how to use that technology the right way. Because if you put in, I still remember, a conversation with the CTO. He said, Naz, look, I spent $5 million putting this infrastructure together, but I'm not seeing any ROI on it. And we did a little bit of discovery to find out people weren't equipped to use that new technology. And the natural reaction to that, though, that they would pivot into old way of doing things, which really never helped them realize the ROI. So it's very tight in terms of like how you proliferate this new technology, but then also have enablement for people to understand how to best leverage these tools to then scale the model that they've developed as a POC to bring you the ROI, to deliver those customer experiences, and then also again listen to customers based on data inputs, and then improve processes internally. So it's a lot of nuance. That's why AXEGENAI. That's what I mean. That was one of the crux of the conversation when you and I talked about is we came to be because of that particular problem. Is how do you help organizations figure out how do you improve operational efficiency and where you can see the ROI through generative AI. So
That's right.
I am certainly looking forward to this conversation where I have an open dialogue with a lot of people that join us eventually in future, because I love learning. I don't have the answer to everything or even a single equation for that matter, and I love to learn things. But I'm more than happy to share my perspective, and along the way have a dialogue and learn from you. So looking forward to the to subsequent conversations.
Absolutely. Well, anybody who's listening and everybody that's is interested in further discussion, please keep in touch with us on LinkedIn. We will post this a few times so that way you are able to view it later times. Until the next time, adios and ciao. And Naz, thank you so much for the time, buddy.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. All
Yep.
right.